They put a purple robe on him, twisted together a crown of thorns, and put it on him. The soldiers began to salute him. "Hail, King of the Jews!" They kept hitting him on the head with a reed and spitting on him. They also kneeled down to pay homage to him. When they had mocked him, they took off the purple robe and put his own clothing on him. Then they led him out to crucify him. A certain man, Simon of Cyrene, the father of Alexander and Rufus, was passing by on his way in from the country. They forced him to carry Jesus' cross. Dear fellow redeemed sinners, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? And yet it's just as Jesus said in advance that it would be. The soldiers mock him, they beat him up, they spit on him, they bow down in mock worship of him who is the creator of the world and the preserver of the universe. The angels who love him perfectly and have worshipped him since the creation, make no move to intervene. The Father himself, who has declared the Son the one whom he loves and to whom we should listen, does not send thunderbolts to destroy those who are hurting his own dear Son. The glory of Jesus is completely hidden under bruises and blood, under spit and shame and abuse of every kind. And now that his humiliation is just about as low as it can get, they take him away to crucify him. But not even that part of the journey can be uneventful. Jesus has not eaten since the Passover the night before. He's probably not even been given a drop to drink, and yet they strap to his arms the crossbeam of the instrument of execution on which he will die, and they tell him to carry it himself up that long, winding way of sorrows up to Calvary. Famished, weak, particularly dehydrated from the loss of blood from the flogging, Jesus stumbles. He winds up in the dirt down on the road. He can't lift it. The one who carved out the mountains and fashioned the hills and valleys cannot lift the cross. Isn't there anybody going to step up and help him, like one of the 10 lepers that he healed? Where were they? Or what about that strapping young man of Nain that Jesus raised from the dead right off of his funeral bier? Or some of those blind men that can now see, or the deaf who can hear? What about Jair, whose daughter Jesus raised from the dead? Isn't there anybody? And the answer is no. No one steps forward to help Jesus. But what's more astonishing is this. Jesus, the Almighty Son of God, does not step in any way to help himself, to make his own load lighter. You realize that if Jesus had wanted to, he could have balanced the whole cross on the tip of his finger, like a toothpick. But instead, he humbles himself under the weight of it. The soldiers can kick Jesus and whip him and beat him as much as they want, but that's not going to get them up the hill any faster, and that's what they want. They want to get this whole messy business over with so they can get back to their barracks and do what soldiers do. So they grab a random stranger out of the crowd. Simon of Cyrene happens to be in town to observe the Passover. Without warning, they simply take him and order him to carry the cross with Jesus. It's hard to grasp how people can be so hardened, so brutal and heartless. It's also a bit difficult to understand how, despite the Roman soldiers, nobody dared to even lift one finger on their own to help him. None of those people who said they followed Jesus or who said they loved him. But what may be even more puzzling to us is why Jesus did not do anything to help himself. Would it have been wrong of him to quietly use just a little bit of his almighty power to at least stand up straight and march somewhat stoically and proudly up that hill to the altar of the cross to pay for the sins of the world? Would it have been wrong for Jesus to show a little bit more dignity on his way to death? After all, he had shown a glimmer of glory in Gethsemane when they came to arrest him, said they were seeking Jesus of Nazareth. He said, "I am he," and they stepped backward and fell over. And shortly thereafter, Jesus healed the ear of Malchus, the servant of the high priest, the ear that Peter had rashly cut off. He had even ordered the people who came to arrest him, "Let these men go," and they had obeyed him. But no, not only would nobody else help Jesus, he did not help himself. Why? Because he wanted to show even more clearly just how much he loves us. That is what Jesus' true glory is all about. It is not about awing us with his power. Christ's greatest glory is his total, selfless, self-sacrificial love for us. Love that is willing to suffer all, even death, even total helplessness and humiliation, all for us. He wants us to know that the price he paid for us out of love is not bargain basement. It's not 50% off. It's not Walmart employee store. He paid full price for our salvation because he loves us. The suffering and death decreed as punishment for the sinner already in the Garden of Eden was real suffering and real death. And so the suffering of the one who now stands in the place of sinners has to be the real thing. And so Jesus stumbles under the crushing weight of the cross. He falls down on the pavement and stains it with his blood. Note this well. Jesus did not stumble morally by cursing his tormentors in the court of the high priest and then in the courts of Pilate and Herod. He did not stumble spiritually by hurling lightning bolts of terror and torment at those who had scourged and spit on him. No, it's just like Isaiah prophesied. He goes quietly as a lamb to the slaughter. He suffers painfully as a loving Savior. He falls. He lets us see his glory in the suffering that pays for our redemption. And he does so because he knows that we too will stumble. We too will fall. He wants the sight of his stumbling and falling to be a consolation for us. He wants the sight of it to encourage us with the thought that he understands and knows our pain at such times. The epistle to the Hebrews puts it so well. We do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way just as we are, yet was without sin. He is able to deal gently with those who are ignorant and are going astray, since he himself is subject to weakness. It's our own fault when we stumble and fall. Just think of the disciples in Gethsemane. If they had just watched with him that hour as he prayed and listened to his word, if they had just let his gracious presence with them give them strength, they would not have stumbled. The spirit is willing, Jesus said, but the flesh is weak. Oh, so weak. And because it is, we have fallen just the same. But unlike Jesus, our stumbling is moral and spiritual failure. And also, unlike Jesus, we do not have the power, if we so desire, to stand up on our own power. We need outside help, the help that he gives. But so often we haven't asked for it or taken it. Instead, we pander to our own weakness. We think that we can play with the devil, just a little greed, just a little gossip, just a little getting even, just a little lust, just a little bit. How nice it would be just for once to let somebody else do the work and serve and to just be served. Oh, what a relief to just for a moment not follow in his footsteps, not love him to the point of actually obeying him. Wouldn't it be nice to love and obey me? And so through our own fault, we stumble, we fall. And like a Roman soldier, our conscience kicks us while we're down. Others on the sidelines cry out, "What a hypocrite! He's no better than we are. He says he's a Christian, but look at how shallow his Christianity is. He doesn't live up to what he says. He's just putting on a show." But truly, how blessed we are when our consciences kick us when we are down. How blessed we are when others rightly shame us because we have stumbled and fallen into hypocrisy. Because down on the street, down in the mud, kicked and prodded for our play acting, we may at last see Jesus down there. To bear the punishment for stumbling that is our own fault, he stumbled. To endure the eternal shame we deserve because we love to fall, he fell. Thinking of you and your salvation, he let himself be kicked. He did it so that he could meet you down on the street of your shame and in the gutter of your guilt. And from his stumbling and falling, you would know and understand that he loves you in spite of it. Yes, he loves you and raises you up to begin again your journey up the hill carrying the cross. Throughout our life, we carry the cross that Jesus told us to bear. But when we fall under the weight of it, Jesus lifts us up. Jesus washes that dirt from the road off of us through his gift of baptism. When we are dying of thirst, he gives us to drink of his own blood in Holy Communion. And when we are dying of hunger, he nourishes us with the bread that he says is his body, although no one gave him a drink or a crust of bread. Simon of Cyrene was forced to carry the cross for Jesus when he stumbled and fell. But Jesus willingly and eagerly comes to your side when you stumble and fall, even though your stumbling is your own fault. Isn't that the most amazing thing? He does not kick us when we are down. He comes to lift us up. And is this not reason to love him all the more as we follow him in Lent? Let your heart and soul be so filled with his grace and mercy that has always been there for you. And then, when he lifts you up in your falls, just maybe you will not stumble and fall so far the next time. And then maybe, just maybe, you'll join Jesus in helping others lift their crosses and get up off the ground, rather than kicking them while they're down like some Roman soldier. We know that this procession under the weight of the cross to Calvary does not simply end with death. It ends with Jesus' victory cry, "It is finished." And it ends with Jesus' resurrection on Easter Sunday. It ends at Jesus' return to take all those who have stumbled and fallen, but whom Jesus himself has lifted up, to take them to be with him in heaven. May this victory procession we are in be filled with people who have stumbled and fallen, us and many others. May it be filled with those who were raised up and washed and renewed by Jesus, who himself stumbled and fell. May it be filled with those whose sorrows we have willingly shared, whose guilt we have forgiven, and whose crosses we have helped carry out of love for Jesus, who carried our cross for us and earned our salvation. Amen.